welcome you back to the program. Gerald Celente, he's an American trends forecaster. He's the publisher of the Trends Journal. He's a business consultant. He's an author, and he's a frequent guest here at the Next News Network. Gerald, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me on.
Gerald, let's start off with the Trends Journal forecast for 2016. Economist Albert Edwards says the U.S. stock market will fall 75%. How deep do you think it's going to fall?
Well, you go back to our forecast we made on August 6th, 2015. It's there for everybody to see. I said the markets were going to unravel this year, and we're going to go into a crash. And I also said on December 30th, our headline for our Trends in the News broadcast was the panic of 2016. So did the market unravel and crash last year as I predicted? Yes. It doesn't crash overnight. When I made that forecast, the Dow proceeded to lose 1,000 points after that and closed out the year on a down note and opened up the year continuing on the down note to the worst week, the first New Year's week in recorded history.
Wow.
Following that, oil prices down 11%. Can it go down the S&P 75? Yes, it can. I don't put numbers on how low it can go, but what we are saying, it's more than a 20% correction. And from that, it'll keep sliding. Because the only thing that propped the markets up, and we wrote about it as it happened back in 2009, this is no recovery, it's a cover-up. They covered it up with quantitative easing and zero interest rate policy, and you can see the results. It's not a conspiracy theory or a thought process that does not have fact behind it. We saw in 2015, for example, the greatest levels of mergers and acquisitions in history, plus stock buybacks. So the whole stock market growth was nothing more than an artificial bubble.
So, Gerald, I do want to get into QE in just a moment here, but how do you think that the stock market crash is affecting Americans?
It's very funny. It's very different this time because the people aren't in the markets like they used to be. Most of them are, you know, you look at the jobs being created. It's not as though people are playing the markets. So they don't have that connection to it as they used to. They're so far removed from it. So the psychological impact hasn't hit them yet. It will, because the market decline is really nothing more than a reflection, and it hasn't been reflecting, of one of our top trends, and that is a global recession. Gary, when I mentioned that oil prices lost 11% in the first week of trading in the new year and continue to go down, and then you read the media from the business world and the mainstream, they tag this decline on two basic reasons: China, slowing economy, and oil.
Right, and I want to talk about that because the UK Financial Bank Standard Chartered said that we think oil prices could fall to as low as $10 a barrel. How do you think that's going to affect commodities?
Again, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not oil. It's everything. Mm-hmm. You look at iron ore. It was selling for over $200 a ton in 2011. It's going for around $40 now. Copper, nickel, zinc, corn, wheat, soybeans. The commodity index is at 1999 levels and falling. It's a global slowdown. So by looking at China and oil, they're making it, 1 and 1 is 2. It's bigger than that. This has been going on for a long time. The only reason it kept going on, again, going back to quantitative easing, all of that cheap dough went into the emerging markets. They were borrowing money for nothing. So now we go back to the bubble bursting. It's the bond bubble. Put back oil into it and energy and mining. I mentioned how low the commodity prices are. Then you look at the junk bonds when they had zero interest rate policy. People flooding into junk bonds. Some 20% of the junk bonds in America are oil and mining related. And now you're seeing the energy sector collapsing,
right now,
as well as the bond prices.
So Arch Coal just filed for bankruptcy as prices are plunging. So are we also now seeing a collapse in the coal and oil drilling?
Exactly. But here's the other thing, by the way, with the oil drilling, they're still drilling. They're not pumping, but they're drilling. They have over 4,000 wells that they've drilled that they're ready to put online when the prices go up. So that's going to flood more product on the market. So they're desperate to keep it going. It's the same thing with the shipping industry. You know, the big CapEx ships, they need like $20,000 to break even a day. They're floating a ship rather. They're floating them out at $4,300. They'll do anything to keep it going. They'll keep producing and producing. They're driving us into a global recession. It's proven by the deflationary pressures. Deflation equals depression. You have a depression in prices, a depression in economies. Look what's going on in Brazil. That economy is now heading toward depression. Look at Venezuela, rich in oil, poor in dough, 200% inflation rate. Look at Africa, rich in resources, not when they're selling for pennies on the dollar. The rand has declined 10% in one day. You go around the world, Ghana, Congo, Niger. Again, Gary, all these things are connected. All things are connected, Chief Seattle allegedly said.
Let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East right now, because we're seeing...
I am, and that's what I wanted to get to. Well, it's connected.
The conflict, let's talk about the conflict now that's rising between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And of course, we see Russia working with Assad to destroy ISIS and beat back the Western-backed rebels there. And of course, we see the complete